Damon, little walkout song, huh?
Yep.
I love it. Oh, all right. I'm loving this.
All right, everybody. Happy Monday. What a wonderful day. It's a great day to have a great day. What a great walkout song, Damon. So, dude, did you get a good night's sleep last night?
Woo, I did.
Man, all right. We've got an amazing, incredible guest today, man. I'm a little hot under a collar here. So we've got the one, the only, we've got Nagesh Rao. Is that right? Rao. So all right, we're going by G today. So G, happy Monday to you. Thank you for joining us today. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I actually had a great weekend. Carved some pumpkins with my sons.
Oh yeah.
So that was a lot of fun with my wife.
Yeah.
The weekend kicked off well. So I did the Reimagine Manufacturing event on Friday in Philadelphia with the DBIRC crew.
Nice.
And so Bernadine Hawes, who's the chair of the advisory board for NIST MEP's Manufacturing Advisory Board, she was there. And so she and I got to hang out a bit in Philly, and it was a good time. I really enjoyed my time there and for celebrating Manufacturing Month. And then nice way to cap out the weekend was hanging out with my wife and two sons. And we carved pumpkins. We hung out with some family friends. And my sons last night took up the backyard where it was a beautiful night in DC. So the older son, who's 3.5, was kicking around the soccer ball, and the younger son, who's 2, picked up the badminton racket and started wanting to play badminton. So it was good. How about you all? Did you have a good weekend?
Oh, my goodness gracious. It was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And hey, G, we've got a few friends here today, man. We've got Buckley in the house coming to us live from
Buckley, B squared.
B squared. We've got Derek from
Derek, from Vessel.
Man, coming. Tracy, she's
a good
people.
She's a dear friend. So we've met these folks at the MEP conference, Buckley again. And we've got Darren Smith. Hello, greetings, everyone. So guys, thank you for joining us, and drop us a note. Let us know you're out there. Let us know where you're coming from. We've got the acting director of the MEP conference. And so MEP network rather. And so we're just super excited to dive in. So as we get things started, I have a question for you. So a bunch of folks send in questions for us. Yeah. So curious minds would love to know, when you're a little guy growing up, now on your LinkedIn profile, you have Gen Xer who from immigrant parents. I love your tagline, connect with G on LinkedIn. He's a powerhouse. When you're a little guy growing up, who was your hero? Who did you look up to? Who was your hero when you were a little guy growing up?
It's funny. So as a little guy growing up, I'm in awe of my parents and the good work they did as immigrants for sure. But from a pop culture kind of reference for a moment, I got to give it up to, folks like Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior from World Wrestling Entertainment, and Bret Hitman Hart. If you want to be real and honest, when I was a little kid, because I grew up in that era of time.
Yep.
And my dad was a big wrestling buff. He loved watching that program, and so we'd watch it. And my dad would always say, "Vince McMahon's right. The brain's wrong," that kind of thing. And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I'm watching this stuff, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and Sergeant Slaughter and Boss Man. So like that was what I grew up around. That entertainment and apparatchiks of folks. And it's not to say I agree with it today or stuff, but like as a little kid.
Right.
That's what I got exposed to. And that's what the truth is. So if you talk to kids who are if you talk to any of us who were, from that first gen immigrant family, a lot of immigrant families tuned to that kind of programming.
Right.
Because it was a way to connect and feel like you were American.
Right.
And the truth is, in my household, in the household my parents had, it was Indian. And then outside it was American. And so the one way I could relate with my childhood classmates was pop culture and entertainment. And that was one of them.
Yeah.
Man, great. Damon, we have not had Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, right?
Roddy Piper. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Some of the classics, how about Ventura, right? So a bunch of the classics from the 80s.
Yeah. It's funny. I tell folks, if you want to understand people, you got to understand the environment and culture they're from. And you got to understand, you got to level set with them and be able to relate with them in some shape or form. And one of the biggest things of export that we export from America was entertainment.
Yes.
Well, I absolutely love it. And hey, gee, we've got some friends coming at you. We've got Molly coming from Boise.
Boise.
The
Yeah.
fall foliage is beautiful here in a city of trees. We've got Darren coming from Australia. We've got Sadia here. We've got, hey, our buddy Mike from the Oregon MEP is here. Mike, happy Monday to you. And the Oregon Ducks are doing great stuff.
Oh,
We've got
God,
Dampton coming from Nigeria. We've got Lawrence coming from NYC. Happy Yankees are in the World Series, Lawrence.
Yes.
Congratulations to you.
I was kind of hoping for a Subway Series. I'll tell you, it been like it was late '90s, early 2000s since the last Subway Series, and I was in college or right after college, and I just remember that time. And so I was like, oh man, are we going to get another Subway Series? And I was like, darn it, it's New York and LA, but
Well, I love it. So again, guys, drop a note. We've got, let's see, we've got a gentleman coming from South Africa, and Darren says, I loved Hulk Hogan too. So, gee, so let's dive into a little bit of your background here. So, RPI grad, you're an Albany guy, Albany Law School. Looks like you got an MBA from Maryland. Talk to us a little bit. So, immigrant parents, Hulk Hogan's your hero. What drove you to go to RPI? Let's hear a little bit about college age, G, if you would, please.
I got two older sisters and a younger sister, right? And my two older sisters came to America with my parents, whereas me and my younger sister were born here in America. And so growing up, I did not know what I wanted to be personally. I knew what my parents expected of me, and anyone who's been encountered or engaged with folks from the South Asian diaspora community know there's a hierarchy there. It's medical doctor, and then PhD scientist, and then, business, and then law, and it goes down. And so, there was a strong expectation for me to go medical. And I had thought that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't until I found myself at RPI in college and with my classmates that I started to, come up and define myself from a personal identity of who I was as a person. We joked about Hulk Hogan being a hero, but actually another one was Spider-Man, right? So I got hooked to the Spider-Man comics as a kid because I saw this guy who didn't know Peter Parker didn't know who he wanted to be. He had this, was an engineering student at Manhattan College and was just trying to figure out who he was as a person. And I think I identified and related a lot with, I didn't know who the heck I wanted to be. So when I went to RPI, I did the engineering thing because I was not doing well in the biological medical route. So I was like, well, let me try doing engineering. And I did decently better, but I just wasn't sure what I wanted to be. And my older sister and her husband had also gone to RPI, and they went all the way through for their PhD in materials engineering. For me, bachelor's was enough. And it wasn't until the end senior year when I really started to get more interested in policy, intellectual property law, and that landscape of technology commercialization and startups a little bit. And so that's what genesised me as, after I finished up at RPI, I worked in the University Tech Transfer Office, trying to figure myself out more. I took up a job over at Starbucks and was doing coffee jockey by day, doing work for the University Tech Transfer as well, and other things just to kind of figure out who the heck I was and what the heck I wanted to do. And that's where I got into the Albany Law Program, did that master's. They had up to 4 years. I did it in 1 year. I just was like, look, let me just get some skill sets, figure myself out, and we'll go from there. And quite honestly, I don't think I got a better sense of myself until I moved to DC. And that was in 2004 after I finished on my bachelor's and master's and took a gap year. I started doing work over at the National Academy of Sciences with their materials, what's now the Materials and Manufacturing Advisory Board, as a Mirzayan fellow on policymaking decisions and how to help America be more competitive in the materials and manufacturing space. And I actually got to work on the first round edition of the Triennial National Nanotechnology Initiative at its birth. Wow. So that was pretty cool. Things so folks don't know is I actually had my fingerprints on some of those efforts there back in the beginning, early days. And that's where I got hooked on public policy a bit. But I also liked intellectual property law, and I thought I might do well in patent law. So I got a job at the Patent and Trademark Office as a GS7 patent examiner. And I climbed up the ranks there by day working at the patent office, learning and understanding intellectual property and how it impacts inventors and entrepreneurs and small businesses and startups, and the fact that that's a tangible asset that can help with evaluation for a small business or startup. I ended up reviewing back in the early days some of the earliest additive manufacturing patents that
Wow.
I reviewed some of the early ones, and especially around biological manufacturing of body parts.
Mm-hmm.
And the famous one I did was the one from NASA, where they were developing a set of technology. It was Karen Tamager, who was the scientist there. They were developing the technology for enabling the Mars missions to happen down the road, where they were going to have to do additive manufacturing on Mars if they were ever going to do an exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So they were developing what is those apparatuses, what is those physical, heavy pieces of machinery they're going to need to take over there, and the forging, right? You're doing your forging over there, but what were the components of that those machines would look like? So I ended up getting to work on that stuff, and then I actually ended up reviewing the portfolio of Cree, the LED lighting technology. I reviewed those too. I pivoted a bit in semiconductor crystals as well. So it was great 7 years at patent office. I learned an awful lot. And from patent office, I pivoted. I got my MBA part-time at night, debt-free, was hungry for the next thing. I could have stayed in government, or I was going to take a risk, and I took a risk. I moved to LA and joined a startup. That failed miserably. It was clean tech meets social media. It failed miserably. It was horrible. But I learned an awful lot about myself, as like when you break free of the shackles and you start to carve and figure out who you want to be. And so when I was working out in Los Angeles, I ended up getting hooked up with some folks over in the Bay Area. So I pivoted and moved from LA up to San Francisco, San Jose area, because I had some family up there, and I had a lot of friends who were playing in the next round of startups there. And I again, wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. Here I am now, armed with a few degrees, skilled with engineering, philosophy, public policy, as well as with business and intellectual property law and international stuff. And I was like, how do I blend all this together? And how do I make this viable? And I ended up doing pro bono work while I was taking that year off in the Bay Area. Lo and behold, I didn't realize I was doing pro bono work with some pretty heavy hitters, including Eric Schmitz from Innovation Endeavors. Oh, well, those who don't know, Eric Schmitz is the former CEO and chair of Google.
Yeah.
So I ended up advising a number of his portfolio companies, because some of the friends I had met and knew from the LA scene, who are also based in the Bay Area, they were being funded by him. So, and my name just started to spread because I knew a lot about intellectual property. And it was during that time in the early 2010s, 2012 time period, where patents were a big deal. If anyone remembers the big lawsuit, that settlement that had occurred between Apple and Samsung on the mobile patent technology and the mobile phone devices. And then there was the one around Yahoo and Yahoo's search engine intellectual property and Google. So, there was a big bum rush during that next phase of round two of the tech bubble, where intellectual property was being seen as a real true asset to take advantage of, and venture capitalists were trying to really understand it better. And lo and behold, I'm walking around. Who knows how the patent office works? I know how that whole office works. I know what patents are seen as viable, what's not. So all of a sudden, these folks, and I'm doing pro bono. So all of a sudden, I'm getting hit up by a bunch of people saying, "Can you take a look? We're getting hit by this patent troll, or we're getting hit by this patent infringement issue. Do you know what's going on? How do you help us decipher and demystify the federal government and the processes that are here?" Because it's all legal jargon to them. And that's what I was doing. And I ended up working with some really cool projects and working with some cool people in that world, with companies out of the Bay Area and also in upstate New York, helping them figure out their IP portfolio stuff. And that's where I said, I got a niche here. I know how to talk legal, I know how to talk technical, and I know how to talk business. And it was because of that I got recruited over back into government by the Small Business Administration back in 2014 timeframe. So I was out for a few years from government around 2011. 2014 timeframe, I got pulled back in late 2013, early 2014. And it was during that time that because I knew the government talk and I knew how to navigate those various worlds, I got asked to help with the Small Business Innovation Research Program.
Wow. Man, dude,
Yeah.
what an underachiever he is.
Yes.
Darren. What do you,
Yes.
Oh,
my
but it was fun. But and it was turned out a lot of the companies in the Bay Area were funded by SBI or funded SBI funded funding from the different agencies. So I again demystified. And during that time, I built out SBR.gov. So those who want to understand how to tap into the 4 billion plus non-dilutive capital funding, that was me. And then I pivoted actually after doing all that venture capital, private equity, tech startup, stuff. I pivoted into IT management. And I did that, but it was funny because during that time too, I took on I kept doing pro bono work on the side as I disclosed it to ethics. I said, no conflicts of interest. I had at the time, I wasn't a dad. I had a fiance and was getting married. So it's just me and my wife and that was it. And, I was helping my parents out but my parents were good at the time and my sisters were fine. So I took on a consulting gig out of Sri Lanka, which turned out to be a really good move for me. So 7 years, because Sri Lanka's 10.5 hour time difference.
Yeah.
Nights and weekends, I would spend time with that company. Turned out it was the OEM to Nike, Lululemon, Victoria's Secret. So the major garment manufacturer company, MAS.
Yeah.
If you look up MAS Holdings, 80,000 employees, a few bill revenue per year. I ended up being the senior advisor and like their chief technology guy for chief venture technology guy to the C-suite. So I was helping those folks, and it was a really cool opportunity. Again, doing that in my private, personal time, nights and weekends, separate from government altogether. Disclosed it to ethics, kept my lives separate. So I actually, and part of it was I wanted to keep my skills developing in the manufacturing and material science world while I was doing government policy stuff. I was like, look, I invested a lot of time and energy in these different skill sets. Keep them fresh, even if I'm not using them for my 9-to-5 bread and butter. Keep them fresh, because what's the point in having the skill sets if you're not keeping them fresh? And so that's what I did. And so if you see a lot of the your dry fit technology from Nike and a bunch of other stuff, that's MAS Holdings.
Wow.
Lululemon was another client, so it was cool. That was cool because we started to pioneer in wearables, and right now I keep in touch with those folks there from time to time, see how they're doing. And now they've pivoted into gamer tech. So a lot of the gamer tech equipment that folks use to competitively play in e-gaming, esports, that's being designed by MAS Holdings.
Wow.
If you look them up, and that's what's interesting. That's what got me. I remember that moment. I'm working with the company. I took a few days off from my day job so I could go with them to Vegas to CES, just with the MAS team. And I remember the moment that I realized, okay, this is a pretty phenomenal opportunity working with Nathan and Ronald. If anyone's ever been to CES, that's run by Consumer Technology Association, there's the floor and there's all the happily cool products and stuff that people are doing. That's all the stuff that's for the public. Mm-hmm. That's not where all the deals are happening. The deals are happening over in the penthouse suites of the Bellagio and in across from Bellagio, Palazzo and Venetian, right?
Right.
So everyone's over by the convention center and the Wynn and a few others, but all the deals are actually happening in Caesar's Palace and a few others in the penthouse suites. And I remember that moment where we're in the penthouse suite over in I want to say it was Bellagio. It was Bellagio or no, it was Palazzo Venetian. And we have our gear set up because we had partnered with Patagonia on some next gen gear. And in walks in, if anyone remembers, Fitbit, the CEO, James Park, I think was his guy's name, just smoothly walks in. And my job was to be like a consigliere, to be in the background, read the room, and help MAS, because they're all Sri Lankan, help them understand the American cultural and dynamics. Goes back to the thing I talked about in the beginning. Be able to relate and be able to connect on the thoughts on that. And I'm watching the room. I'm explaining afterwards we have a discussion, and it was a pretty interesting conversation we were having with Fitbit around what our gear could do with Fitbit. And it was important to me to understand that, because I got to see at a high level what they were thinking from a supply chain and from a mass manufacturing of what the next big thing could be for a product. Because, at the end of the day, when you produce this stuff, if you got a home run, it sells quickly. But if you don't, you're sitting on all this product and you don't know what to do with it, and then you got to fire sale it. And that was like one of the coolest lessons I ever learned was that one. And then the one actually ties back to WWE. So there's a connection. So Nathan Sivaganathan, who was the chief growth officer at MAS, he's an Eisenhower fellow, and I'm also an Eisenhower fellow. So we knew each other also through the Eisenhower Network. And Stephanie McMahon, the former CEO and acting chair CEO of WWE, Vince McMahon's daughter, she's also an Eisenhower fellow. So we got in a meeting. Now, this is what explains like what happens at that high level. This is like I'm giving you a first like real life lesson of what really happens at those upper echelons of gameplays, and especially is when you're playing a consigliere role, you get to see and go, So I remember Nathan got the meeting with Stephanie because they were part of the same cohort that year. I was the year after, and we went to WWE headquarters in Manhattan. And I remember the conversation because we were having this conversation with them about how to get our gear being utilized by the wrestlers. We thought there might be a certain, because Stephanie was interested. She said, look, if you're making all this really cool athletic gear for Lululemon and Nike, she's like, why can't you do it for me? Because they used, I think it was Tap Out. Yeah, not Taproot, Tap Out. They used another gear. So we had those active conversations with them. And I remember the moment, again, learn to read the room, learn how to engage with folks on that cultural connection. So there was another guy on the team who was a big wrestling buff, wrestling nerd. So we're joking around, and I could see the conversation immediately happening where there was a little bit of a disconnect between some of our guys from the company with WWE. And I kept quiet because I was letting them figure out how they want to have the conversation first. And then I swooped in with the other guy and I said, what if we created a storyline opportunity where you bring out some nerdy wrestler guys who come in and create some Iron Man tech gear that makes them souped up when they wear the gear and then wrestle through, and you find this pivot, like, powered by MAS. It was that Hail Mary pitch I threw at the time. The guy got interested. He said, that could be interesting. Did it end up happening, materialize into a deal? No, it did not. Let me get to the picture. But the meeting went from like kind of lukewarm to all of a sudden, well, let's talk, because now you're talking my language. You're trying to find an angle for me, to make this relevant and viable to me. And I think at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. When we come back to, let's spin it back to, here we're talking about MEP, right? The National Network. You got to be able to relate and make it relatable, and people have to feel a connection to it, right? And especially manufacturing, you got to have a connection to it. When a job is on the line, when your livelihood's on the line, when that it's a good quality product that's in your hands, and it was only possible because you had a good company manufacture it and do it, that means a lot. And I think, I married into an automotive family, right? So my wife's father was the chief of design over at GM, right? Cadillac, Saturn, Buick. He designed a bunch of those cars. The Cadillac was the last one he did. The Evoque concept that Misdemeanor Elliott loved, and she featured it in MTV Cribs. So like that was my father-in-law's last design.
Wow.
Tired. It was awesome.
Yeah.
There was something to be said about quality, right? Like, it wasn't shitty. It wasn't like subpar. It was like, oh my God. And why am I saying that? Is because if you think about it, and you produce a quality product that sticks around for a long time, and you manufacture it with really good stuff, brand reputation, people buy into it. People are interested in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Hey, a couple comments here. So Jeff Spain from where is he? Here's Darren. Here's Jeff from Columbus says hello. So hello to Jeff at one of the Ohio MEPs. We've got Skylar coming from Denver saying hello. And so again, guys, drop us a note. Let us know that you're out there. Diane Byer drops a note.
Diane.
Speaking of the importance of connection this morning. So all right, man, that was a lot.
Like a lot. I threw a lot in. And honestly, that's still scratching the surface.
And it's all about Hulk Hogan, right? It all comes back to Hulk Hogan. Right?
It does in some shape or form. I mean, and that was wild. I remember I actually sent a note to Stephanie once briefly. I mean, it's not like we're friends, right? But we know of each other.
Right.
I actually worked for her mom when her mom was the head of SBA. I actually worked for her for a bit, and she was cool. Linda McMahon was great to talk to and work with. She was a real professional. And I remember one time I wanted to ask her. I wanted to be like, I remember Royal Rumble in the 90s.
Yeah.
When Hogan lost, and it was to Ric Flair. Yeah, Ric Flair, because it wasn't Mr. Perfect. It was Mr. Perfect, I think. It was the last three. And the reason why I know this is because it happened in Albany. And my dad couldn't get us tickets to it, but he got us pay-per-view. And so I remember that moment because it was in the early 90s. We're watching it, and I'm watching Hogan lose and Ric Flair take the belt, and I was pissed about that. And I always wanted to ask Stephanie and Administrator McMahon, I was like, why did you let Rick win that belt? Like,
Yeah.
Yours a therapy, right? Like how you're still not over it, G, right? You're still not over it. So, all right, I want to you scratch on the question. I want to you talk about the Eisenhower Fellow that I think you earned that 2006.
Yeah, I earned that in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, just enlighten us. Again, connect with G on LinkedIn. His background is just phenomenal. We're just scratching the surface. Just talk a little bit about the Eisenhower Fellowship.
It's a game-changing, life-changing fellowship. So it is it's a leadership development program that's focused around cross-pollination and cross-connecting of folks from around the world who are committed to justice, peace, and prosperity in the world.
Wow.
It was a fellowship created in honor of President Dwight Eisenhower as a birthday gift for him from a number of benefactors who wanted to celebrate his legacy and leadership as both, the commander of armed forces, allied forces during World War II, and thereafter as probably one of the most consequential presidents of the 20th century in American history. If you really think about it, there's a few up there who are consequential, and he's one of them with FDR. I mean, you wouldn't have the interstate highway system if it wasn't for Eisenhower. You would not have DARPA if it wasn't for Eisenhower. You actually wouldn't have NASA if it wasn't for both Eisenhower and Lyndon B. Johnson. Both of them combined played their roles in that. If you ever go to the LBJ library at UT Austin, you'll see the story in the background of NASA and everything that Eisenhower put in place for both JFK and then, sadly, after JFK's sad to, passing from an assassination, LBJ took it forward to make sure that 69, missions to the moon happened. You wouldn't have a lot of critical infrastructure and agencies, including the Small Business Administration, if it wasn't for Eisenhower. So this fellowship was designed to connect leaders and rising leaders from around the world, to connect the dots, forge alliances, and essentially what we call tier 2 diplomacy. So your tier 1 diplomacy is what happens at the State Department level with your foreign service officers who engage on the front end. Your tier 2 diplomacy, it happens with folks who are outside of the system, who can't have formal conversations but can have informal conversations. And that's your business leaders, your fellows like Eisenhower Fellows or Marshall Memorial Fellows, and folks in the know and in the world who can actually help connect dots and have conversations that you can't have otherwise. And that's what the fellowship is designed to do, is to create those tangible relationships and engagements. And we have a number of, around the world, a number of reputable leaders who are part of this fellowship. It's a very strong network. It's a very dedicated network. Everyone looks out for each other. In America, 10 are selected per year to represent the United States to go abroad and do this leadership development program, and to help foster international ties with tangible results to your project. So for mine, it was focused around how do I get entrepreneurship and venture capital out past the American market into the global market, and create replicating funds or opportunities abroad. So that's what brought me overseas to a couple of the countries over there, and helping them bridge the ties back of economic ecosystems that they might be doing well that we're not doing well, and also creating an opportunity for what I would call technology leapfrogging in the energy space, for example. When I used to work in clean energy, we developed all this next gen technology, but it couldn't be outfitted or manufactured for use in America because we were so tied down to our general infrastructure state. The switching cost was too high. Mm-hmm. But if you go overseas to countries like India, China, South Africa, and Ghana and whatnot, it's a blank canvas. They're willing to adopt anything and everything because they need solutions. Anything that's a viable solution, they'll take. So, in a good example, I would always highlight to folks was mobile wireless technology. If you really look at the origins of mobile wireless technology and how that blew up, although the critical R&D was done here in the United States, in fact, from government funding through like agencies like National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, and Defense and others, its widespread global adoption was catalyzed by countries like India and China, because they looked at our legacy landline technology back in the 90s and were making decisions. Do we go and replicate what the US has currently, which is going to be obsolete in the next 10 to 12 years? Or do we skip over and grab the stuff that might be not perfect, but in the next few years it's going to perfect itself, work itself through the kinks? And if you're in India, you're going, well, making a phone call is pretty shitty anyways. Why not? What's it to me? At least I can adopt this technology, work out the kinks, and it was a bet, right? You're taking a calculated bet, and those countries, if you really look at it, you'll see it's their adoption that really pushed it forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So, man, lots of unpack here. So, I want to go here because, you've talked, startup, you've been on cutting edge of technology, your legal profession, all sorts of things. What sparked your interest, your passion for manufacturing? Like why? And then next we're going to dive into the MEP, and I'd like to share with folks, who is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, but just share a little bit, you've covered a lot through your journey. What really sparked your interest? And I want to lead up to, when you landed here at the Manufacturing Extension Partnership.
Yeah. So a few things. One, so I talked a little bit about the textile manufacturing work I'd done out of Sri Lanka, but it was actually also in part a little bit my uncle, because he ran a cotton mill in India. So I got to learn a bit about that through him. So that was interesting. But I would say what really sparked it was my time at RPI, in part with my fellow engineering classmates when we were making and building and manufacturing stuff. And it was a bit dormant at the time, but material science and engineering was interesting. Understanding the composition of materials and at a chemical and fundamental physics level was of interest, especially in semiconductor. I did some research for 2 years under a fellowship over at Cornell on semiconductor manufacturing and use of environmental friendly materials, solvent solutions, supercritical CO2 in particular. So that got me interested more of like, and I, especially because I was an econ nerd, I understood the value of self-sufficiency and self-resiliency. And when you know how to make and build, you're not dependent on anyone but yourself, because it's your skill sets that you know and understand. I got exposure to a lot of that too, actually, through my parents' rental property business, because I ended up having to help out and be a quasi handyman at times. So when you're fixing, apartments and stuff, or helping the handyman out with stuff, you're learning all of a sudden on the trade, how to use a saw, how to use a screwdriver, how to use a torch, and there's some funny stories there. I'll save another day. I'll save the one about the drug den that we had to clear out. That was
man,
interesting.
You can't leave us hanging. You got to give us a Cliff Note version of that one then.
So there was a tenant in an apartment who ran a marijuana farm inside the apartment.
Oh no!
Inside. 5 foot topsoil, 5-6 feet topsoil, had the UV lights, everything set up. Cops figured it out, and we were unaware of anything, because the guy was legitimately keeping himself squeaky clean in front of us, right? And it wasn't until a tip had gone down and the bust happened and everything was cleared out. I walked in, I was like, oh my God, none of us knew. Neighbors didn't know. It was like no one knew what the heck was going on. So it was just, again, a guy who came across as squeaky clean.
Yeah.
And so the cleanup of that was a mess. And that's where I remember ripping the drywall out and a bunch of other things and redoing the floors. That was an interesting moment. And a good learned lesson. Always do your double checks on people. But for manufacturing, the other thing too, I was a big Lego nerd, and I really adopted that more during the pandemic. So that inspired me a lot, I would say, in the world of making and manufacturing and building and optimization.
Yeah.
I think that's what really drew me a lot. I also like to cook at home, right? So and folks don't realize that, but when you cook at home and you make and fabricate a meal, you're manufacturing a meal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's science, folks. Or you're just cooking up some noodles. Like, no, it's actually requires some chemistry and science involved when you're cooking up a pad thai dish or an Indian curry dish. It's not just like microwave and done.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's something to be said about like you said, learning how to make things and then how that relates to manufacturing, because you can see the pride, I'm sure, from the projects you completed with your parents, helping them in those places, the pride of seeing something done before and after. And then you see all these people in the US, they're out there helping to make cool stuff in the manufacturing plants. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be semiconductors, it could be cars, it could be, street sweepers. But just the pride in knowing that they did something to make that end product and then seeing it go off and do what it's supposed to do is just so cool.
It is. Absolutely. I was just thinking of a side note story. So my parents, when they came to America, they were part of the first generation of Indian families to come to the country. They were part of the initial wave. And so in upstate New York, they were part of the founding families. In Troy, Albany area, they are part of the official founding families of that region. That's now a massive Indian diaspora, South Asian diaspora. Our family was one of the first ones there. So the Hindu temple that's there in Albany, Shaker Road in Lineville, my dad and mom helped co-found and helped co-create with the other founding families. Nice. And so what's interesting about that was actually my dad got involved, even though he was not a trained engineer or architect. He was he trained up to be a medical doctor. He still got involved. He wanted to understand the process, walked around. If anyone's ever walked into a classical Hindu temple, you'll see the artisan work, the sculptures, the manufacturing. It's a very skilled process. It's a very delicate. It's in the precision these folks use. If you ever walk in and just see how ornate it is, and you just wonder how they did it with like very simple tools of precision. It's something you would just never realize, and you couldn't believe they were doing it. And what was crazy back then is they were doing it with bare feet.
Wow. I tell you, what courage, what inspiration for your folks. No, and again, mention for folks that are just joining us, when we asked who your heroes were, of course, mom and dad were first. What mom and dad's name, please, G?
Oh yeah. So my mom's side of and then my late father was Gatu Nagesh Rao.
Okay. Sending our condolences, and what heroes and what an inspiration that they both are.
Yeah.
To come to another country and just to roll up their sleeves and to dive right in. Absolutely love it. So let's go here, man. We could keep you all day, dude.
I know. But we've got
Iron Man here behind you.
Buckley always yells at me, start on time, end on time. And I always promise.
Yeah, we will.
And so, hey, and drop us a note in the chat box. Let us know you're out there. Let G know that you're coming here.
Yeah.
So, G, let's go here. Manufacturing Extension Partnership. For folks that are not familiar with the MEP network, I'd love to hear what inspired you to, as a matter of fact, I was at the MEP conference when you were announced. Just share a little bit. What attracted you to come to the MEP, and who is the MEP? How do you guys make the world a better place?
Yeah, no. So what inspired me to come over here, I had just finished up a stint as a national security CIO for one of the bureaus at Commerce. I got recruited over to MEP in part because I really love the mission and vision of helping support American manufacturers make, build, and grow in America and help us be resilient and competitive. In part, it was because of what I saw happen during the pandemic. We got pantsed during the pandemic. Let's be real. Yeah. We got pantsed from our supply chain needs. No, we did.
That's a great way to put it.
I could speak firsthand as a customer. So when I was rebuilding our IT infrastructure at the Bureau of Industry and Security and getting it all good to go, there was some critical equipment I needed that I had to wait for because we couldn't get it from China. I had to wait 8 months for some particular hardware equipment. And there are only a couple manufacturers in North America, in America in particular, that could manufacture it at a security level standard where I could then implement and deploy it because it was being used for an agency where everyone had a top secret SCI clearance. So I couldn't use rinky-dink stuff. I had to use something a little bit more sophisticated to make sure, I was addressing our security needs. And so, as a real life customer who was impacted as a result of the pandemic and supply chains, and especially on electronics and stuff of that nature, when I got the opportunity to come in over the MEP program and help push forth on that model of supporting and demystifying and invigorating American manufacturing capabilities, you know, it was something I couldn't say no to. And I had been familiar with the MEP program for a long time, because back when I was at the patent office days and I did some special assignments over there, I ended up working with the MEP program for part of the President Obama Startup America initiative. And so we were partners on a bunch of stuff back in 2010. So I'd already had a first line lens on it. And then when I came back into government a few years later to SBA, I partnered with MEP a lot around intellectual property demystification and that whole getting the MEP network plugged in more with the SBIR stakeholder community. And so just connecting those dots and those cross-pollinating of networks was important to me. And so, you know, for the MEP network, it is a national network. You know, you've got 51 MEP heads across the 50 states and Puerto Rico, and then 450 plus service locations, you know, supporting 36,000 plus manufacturers that we touch base on. To me, it's about de-risking. And the MEP, the value add that MEP brings to the table is de-risking and demystifying the process, right? You know, you've got folks who are trying to be competitive with a lot of small, medium-sized manufacturers, and in particular the small manufacturers. You know, you usually the folks are wearing 2-3 hats a day, and so how do you like make priority of the different tasks you have to do in front of you each day? That's hard. And so having a resource partner like the MEP program and the MEP staff across the 51 centers helps you de-risk and helps you alleviate, you know, some of the worries and stress, and be able to outsource some of your needs through or optimize yourself better, or get access to resources that you may not be able to afford otherwise on your own, right? I think a lot of that access to resources and access to equipment, technological, not only technology tools, but the technical trade from experts across the network is what's important.
So let's go here, G. So share my screen and let's take a look. So again, so for manufacturers out there that are new to this whole MEP thing, like this MEP network, just share a little bit, you know, so, you know, there's.
And I think what's critical here, and this is what's important. If you look at our entire country and the diaspora of our country, it is not monolithic whatsoever. This is a very heterogeneous population with a heterogeneous series of sectors, right? You know, in Los Angeles, it's a big manufacturing base besides arts and entertainment. NorCal, it's Silicon Valley. You go to Oregon, they got a whole bunch of stuff from agro and semiconductor. Same with Washington. And if you go across the country, you'll see a lot of different stuff. And I think a lot of people forget and don't realize that as you go across the country, there's a lot of strengths that each center brings to the table that mitigate the weaknesses that might be there other places. You know, if I need help with semiconductor manufacturing, you know, you need not just go to California. You can go to Arizona, you can go to Texas, you can go to New Mexico. There's a lot of skills right there, including Illinois. If I need help with biotech, you know, it's not just NorCal and Boston. There's Philadelphia. There's good work happening in Raleigh, North Carolina. There's stuff happening in the Midwest. A lot of things folks don't realize is when you think about biotechnology, I think a lot of people think about it from a human perspective, and they forget about the life science and agriculture and animal livestock, right? And the Midwest is full of that science and technology capabilities that folks don't realize and think about. And so what I try to do and make sure everyone understands is play off your strengths, play off your regional strengths, and play off those strengths well. And the weaknesses will work themselves out, because when you're working as a network, you know, you may not, if you go into the room trying to be the smartest person in the room, that's going to damn you. Never ever go into the room thinking you're the smartest person in the room.
Yep.
Go into the room looking. My advice is always go into the room looking to be the dumbest person in the room, because that means then you're surrounded by a sea of geniuses that you can tap into.
Yeah, yeah, you're preaching to the choir, because I typically even by default, Damon, I'm usually the dumbest guy in the room anyway, right? So,
good place to be.
Phenomenal advice. But you know, so what we're looking at here, so for manufacturers out there, as you mentioned, one in all 50 states plus Puerto Rico, and what you can do is you can go right to the website, check out the map, and then just, you know, select the state that you're in. And so let's go here.
And if that state services can't fulfill your needs, they can go check with their partners at the other states.
Yep. That's the cool part.
That's the whole critical thing that I think Carol Thomas, when she was director, really wanted to push hard as national network. She said, if a small business company comes out to the Gen Ed Edge location in Virginia, but the needs that Gen Edge have, it's not a good match. It's not end of story. It's, Donahue and his team will then say, hey, there might be folks over in Illinois, there might be folks over in Arkansas, there might be folks over in Oklahoma who could help you out.
Yeah. And that's the power of it too. And we've had several instances of people on with MEP centers that have gone to their local MEP, and they've actually, that local MEP has reached out to other MEPs and helped them, and really got the help for the end manufacturer across the network. And that is one of the powerful things behind the MEP network right now is if it's not there where we're at, you can go across the nation and find it.
And that's the goal.
So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start winding down here, G. Just share with folks, when somebody reaches out to their MEP center, can you just dive into a little bit of just, again, like we'd be here all day.
Yeah. So small, medium-sized manufacturer, when you reach out to your MEP center, they'll put you in touch with someone who can help out from that initial client engagement. And they'll scope out your needs and project desires of what it is, if anything that you need help with that they can provide. And then you'll enter a contract with that group. They'll address your needs and concerns and give you a final, end result project of deliverables that you need. And then you go from there. And it's not like a one-time kind of pony, right? You can go back over and over and utilize them as you consistently grow and scale yourself up. But the whole idea is having access to consultants, really. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, it's having access to consultants that are paid for in part by the federal government.
Right. Yep. Excellent. And hey, we've got a comment here from Bernadine. Thank you for stopping by. It's an extension partnership similar to what state universities offer in other.
Bernadine is awesome. I love Bernadine. Yep. I was so glad to see her Friday over at the DVIRC event. So absolutely. And she's absolutely right. It's an extension, right? Mm-hmm. The whole idea is to extend through and deliver on that partnership capabilities. And the reason why it's a public-private partnership is that we, the federal government and the state local government, are putting our 2 cents in, and we're hoping the private partners put their weight into and effectively coalesce so that we're working in partnership hand in hand to help, again, American manufacturing grow and rise.
Well, absolutely love it. And so, 1,300 staff, teammates, strong.
1,400 plus, yeah.
Right, yep. 1,300 plus throughout the entire team, throughout the entire country. And as Damon just mentioned, we've had the honor and privilege of having dozens of your teammates on our little live show. And it's just amazing the talent, the skill, the passion that they bring.
And the services can go from, again, high-tech stuff to low-tech stuff.
Yeah.
Federal procurement, state procurement, funding opportunities. ISO is a big thing that we do. We're now cybersecurity maturity because a lot of the requirements, especially for the small, medium-sized manufacturers that want to work with DoD, there's all that CMMC requirements. So, guidance and helping to get yourself up and more savvy in that world. Lean Six Sigma, Toyota Kata stuff. So there's a lot of different areas of opportunities and support that we do. If it touches in the world of manufacturing in some shape or form, we help provide those services across the 51 centers and sub-centers across.
Yeah. It's just such a great help for manufacturers. I mean, they just need to, if you're listening to this today and you're a manufacturer, you should just get on the NIST site, go out and contact your local manufacturing extension partnership just to start the relationship. Even if you don't need help, have them come and talk to you, because you are going to run into something that you're going to need help with, and they can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the relationship building at the end.
Yeah. Get it started now, because then you're ready when something comes up.
That's right.
Yep. So, G, let's start winding down. What do you like? Where are you with your leadership? Where are you taking MEP? What are you excited about for the future? Where are we going here for manufacturing?
So I'm a big fan of 10X. I'm a big fan of 10X and doubling and pushing forward on our efforts. So, we're pushing hard around the 3 pillars, which is leveraging innovation and technology to support American manufacturers, mitigating supply chain risks and improving its resiliency. And then actually I had a bit of an epiphany over the weekend. So in our plan, it says workforce development. And when I really thought about it over the weekend a bit more, yes, it's to help folks build into the pipeline of American manufacturing workforce for sure. but I really think it should also be considered rethought of as human capital development. And the reason why I say human capital development is because you've got smart folks who just need to skill up, train up, and leg themselves up. Operate in a growth and learning mindset, right? So I could have been a one-trick pony and just went with engineering degree and that's it. Instead, I went back to school at night and got my master's in law. Then I went back to school again and got my MBA. And I still continuously learn and engage. And I'm in fact looking at a couple of other programs in the years ahead to go and skill up a bit more. And between the fellowships, the leadership fellowships I've done, and a few other things, I'm constantly looking to eagerly learn. Like right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of AI. But it's important to know it's here. You've opened up Pandora's box. I got to learn and understand it. Personally, I would have kept Pandora's box closed. And it's on a philosophical level. I don't think we should be playing God. Right. And I think when we did that, we were playing a little bit of like, I don't think we have the moral maturity. I don't think we have the maturity to handle some of that stuff. And that's why that's my my private 2 cents. Like that's not my official NIST position, but it's here. And because it's here, we gotta live and learn and work with it. And so for American manufacturers, you got to leverage it, right? Whether it's RPA technology, MLA, AI, it's here, leverage it, use it. But when it comes to emerging and critical technology stuff, I always think it's be a little bit thoughtful and mindful about how we're going to use it and how we deploy it. Never rush it.
Right. Well, and Diane says human capital development, absolutely always be leveling up. So Diane, thank you for your comments here. All right, we'll start winding down here, G. Yep. And so my last question for you is best business advice as a previous entrepreneur. Your entire career has just been dedicated to helping entrepreneurs be more profitable, be more protected, grow and improve their businesses. What is the best business advice that you would love to pass along to entrepreneurs out there?
So I've been very blessed in my life. I've been able to meet and work and interact and engage with a lot of really cool people. And so I got to give a shout out to Peter Cuneo. Those who don't know, look up Peter Cuneo. He is the former CEO of Black & Decker, Revlon, and he's most famous for his Marvel Entertainment. He turned Marvel Comics and Marvel Entertainment around to become a juggernaut and get it acquired by Disney. Peter's a friend. He is my he's one of my current mentors. He and I serve on a board together. And so he has given me a lot of advice over the last few years as we served on that board together. And Peter is a phenomenal person. One of the things he always reminded me of is like, he'll say things like, go learn a foreign language, go abroad, learn a foreign language, and then come back. Go serve. He's an ex-Navy guy. Go serve in the military. Go be of service to folks. I think one of the best business advice I ever learned from him in particular was learn to read the room and read it right. Read the room and be able to relate with people. And it goes back to what I said in the beginning of like being able to relate with folks. When you can relate with folks and find that ability to connect intrinsically, that's huge. Yeah. And I remember that because we talk an awful lot about comic books and stuff, during the time. Mm-hmm. I remember he always would remind me about how Stan Lee, when he created X-Men, X-Men was built on flawed characters, just like a lot of Marvel Comics characters were built on flawed characters. And he said there was a legitimate reason why Marvel was more successful in his eyes than DC Comics. And he said because people could relate. He said if you looked at the DC Comics pantheon, they were built on characters from gods and goddesses. And he was like, you couldn't relate with that. But he said with Marvel, you could relate with, human flawed characteristics and traits. And he said, that's what sold. And he said, in particular, X-Men, he would say, remember, Nagesh, that was an allegorical tale for the civil rights movement. What folks don't realize, if you ever look at the history of X-Men comics, and when it came out in the 60s, it was an allegorical tale to the civil rights movement to get people who could not relate to be able to relate to the concept of struggle and feeling like not belonging and wanting to belong in a community that didn't want you. Mm. Professor Xavier was written as an allegory to Martin Luther King. And Magneto was written as an allegory to Malcolm X.
Wow.
If you look up the back history, you'll see it.
No,
That is power. That's powerful stuff. That's a drop the mic moment right there, G.
Yeah.
Stan Lee at the time was trying to get folks to relate.
Yeah.
Right. I want you to relate with the struggles that are happening in our community around civil rights.
Yeah.
And in the disenfranchisement that's happening to people of minority status.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Powerful stuff.
Wow.
Read the room. Absolutely love it. Molly drops a comment. Such a great interview. Thank you for your valuable insight and leadership, G. And so big shout out to Molly. So, G, first off, I want to give a huge, tremendous thank you. Maybe I'll put you on the spot. So you're acting director of the MEP Network. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
When are we removing the acting? When
We'll see after November.
All right.
I'm just putting you on the spot. So first off, we thank you. We applaud you. We commend you. Your background, your passion, mom and dad, what they've done, what you're doing for your two young guys. You're laying the foundation for just, can't see where your guys end up. Thank you for your leadership at the MEP Network and how you're making such a difference with manufacturing. Our manufacturers are the heroes of our community. And so we just applaud everybody at the MEP Network for everything that you're doing. Damon, your parting thoughts as we close out today with this conversation with G.
Oh, I'm just so happy we could have you here today, G, and listen to you, man. Your background, how you related into manufacturing, I can see why you're now the acting director. I can see why they've got you there. You are the right person. That's all I'll say.
Thanks.
Thank you. Because it's going to make a difference.
Well, look, we've got a lot to offer, and in a globally competitive world right now, like we have got to make sure we maintain our A game status.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd say, and you mentioned, all the cool kids are going into manufacturing these days. Are they not?
Yeah.
Is that on the record? Are you on the record for that one?
Absolutely on the record for that. In fact, I got a lot of friends who've pivoted their careers into that because they realized and knew if we're going to be really competitive, this is that opportunity for that next round of the moonshot, right?
Yes, it is.
And if you think about how we dominated back in the 20th century, it was because of two critical milestone moments in American history. Post World War II, Brown versus Board of Education decision from the Supreme Court, Sputnik. Those coinciding things happened at the same time. Sputnik got us scared and engaged in the Cold War to go at a whole new level of whoa.
Right.
And Brown versus Board of Education unlocked that diaspora of capital of development because you now desegregated schools and got people to actually diversify and cross-culturally communicate and engage with each other and relate with each other rather than operate in silos.
Yep.
Wow. I've never thought of that. And I think, we're on the really on the cusp of a massive renaissance right now. There's just so much enthusiasm, so much positivity going into manufacturing, so much investment, the CHIPS Act, everything that MEP Network's doing. It's just the sky's the limit right now. So it's a perfect time to get into manufacturing. So G, again, thank you. How about everybody out there? Thank you for everyone in the chat box. Thank you for dropping your comments today.
Thanks, everyone.
Diane, Molly, Buckley, Mike, all you guys, Bernadine, thank you for dropping your comments. Again, connect with G on LinkedIn. Follow the MEP Network. Connect if you're a manufacturer. Stop by and reach out to your local MEP provider, consultant, whatever. They are there for you. So we're going to close out. Hang out with us for 1 second, G. And hey, Damon, how about everybody give a big round of applause for G for just absolutely crushing it today and just hitting the ball out of the park. And so, you know what? And we've had Carol Thomas on the show a couple of times. So G, maybe we'll have you and Carol back on at this.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. That'd be really
You should get Bernadine too. Get Bernadine on there.
Get Bernadine on there. I'll tell you, man, it's going to be like a powerhouse panel. I'll have to take my heart pills that day. So we'll get that lined up. So guys, thank you. Have an amazing, incredible rest of your week. It's manufacturing month. Go out and thank and high five your local manufacturers, and we will see you guys soon.
Great. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Ooh.